Welcome. My name is Joseph, and in this online YouTube class, we're going to focus on improving your reading, listening, speaking, and writing skills for the TOEFL and for your academic English by focusing on a very special word, apparatus. So let's get started. Now, to improve your writing, we have to make sure that you know how to spell this word when you use it in your essays. And we spell this word A-P-P-A-R-A-T-U-S, apparatus. So now to make sure that we interact as a classroom, let's go ahead and have you pause the video so you can write this word out correctly 7 times in your notes so you can really benefit. To improve our listening and our speaking skills, we're going to make sure that we can hear this word well and we can say it well. So as we know in English, when a word has more than one vowel sound, we break it into syllables. So apparatus has 4 vowel sounds, 4 syllables. App, rat, us. So the third one gets the accent. That means we say it louder than the others. So how do we say this word? Apparatus. So again, apparatus. So let's go ahead and have you pause the video so you can say it 7 times correctly and really get the benefit of it. To continue to improve our listening and our speaking skills, we're going to focus on the S sound in apparatus. So in order to say this sound correctly, we have to focus on 6 parts to it. So it's a little bit tough, so let's pay careful attention. The first thing is that our lips are relaxed. And the second thing is that the air actually passes through our mouth when we make this sound and not our nose. So how do we make this sound? S, right? Relax lips and air through the mouth. Now the third thing is where it gets a little bit tricky, and that's where we talk about the position of the tongue. So the front of your tongue should actually rest up against the roof of your mouth, just as if you were making a T sound or a D sound. Now the fourth step is that you actually pass the air in between the roof of your mouth and your tongue, so it goes right in the middle. And what your tongue is going to do, it's going to kind of curve a little bit to let the air pass through, and that's how you get the S sound. So you want to make sure that your tongue is relaxed when you do this. There's no stress, there's no pressure. It's just resting against the roof of the mouth and you're just pushing the air in between. And then that's how you get it. Now the next thing is that this is a voiceless sound. So if you put your fingers on your throat when you make it, you see that you're not actually making any vibrations, and that makes sure that you're making the sound correctly. Now the last thing is pretty important, and that's that this is a long sound and not a short sound. So a lot of students make the mistake of dropping S's at the end of words or not really placing the right emphasis on it. So that means that you're not communicating effectively or clearly, and we don't want to do that. So how do we say our word? Apparatus, right? Nice strong S sound. So again, apparatus. So what I'd love for you to do right now is pause the video so you can practice it 7 times so you can really learn how to say it perfectly. So let's go ahead and do that now. To improve our reading and our listening skills, we're going to learn what apparatus means, which is a complex instrument or a machine with many parts. And we use this word as a noun. To better understand how we use this word in our everyday speech, we're going to bring up a hypothetical example to learn it. And we're going to bring back our friend John. Now, if you remember, John is a businessman, a research scientist, and unfortunately, he's undergoing a lot of money trouble right now. He's in big credit card debt. So he's staying up late at night trying to think of an invention that's going to bring him a lot more money so he can get out of his trouble. So one day he's staying up late at night, and he thinks that he can create an apparatus that can help people who are experiencing heart trouble. So there I used apparatus as a noun to talk about a complex instrument that he wants to create. Now what he imagines, what he hypothesizes is that a surgeon is going to take this apparatus, this complex instrument, and put it inside the body of a patient so it can help the patient have a normal heartbeat. He decides that he's going to call his apparatus a pacemaker. So he's doing some research, he's Googling it, and he finds out that this has already been invented. So he's frustrated and he's angry because his apparatus is already on the market. But fortunately for us, John presents another great example. Now it's time for the great part of the class, and this is where I get to review your work from last week. Last week we learned the word hypothesis, a noun that means imagined. And I asked you to use that word while delivering an answer to an example TOEFL speaking question number 1. And that question was, if your friend had difficulty speaking in front of a large group of people, what advice would you give him or her and why? Use specific reasons and details to support your answer. And I had a lot of wonderful recordings that were submitted. I really enjoyed listening to your voices because I felt like we're really starting to become a class, we're starting to interact. So what I did was I picked pieces of your answers that actually use the word hypothesis and hypothetically and created a combined answer that we can all learn and benefit from. So let's go ahead and hear our first student start us off.
In my view, if hypothetically my friend had a difficulty speaking in front of a large group of people,
what I'm going to do is evaluate your speeches based on TOEFL requirements and teach you ways to improve your answers for the TOEFL. So even if you're not planning on taking the exam, it's still going to be beneficial because it's going to help you to speak more powerfully in more academic and formal settings. So the way that this student delivered the answer was great. We had great grammar, great speed, and good clarity. And we also used the word hypothetically very well. So what I want you to remember is that if you're ever answering a question that's unreal like this situation, it would be great for you to use the word when you're delivering your answer on the TOEFL. So now let's go ahead and hear our first reason.
I would give the following advices. So first of all, I would encourage her to practice her speaking. I would suggest her to close her eyes, for example, and to hypothesize there would be people in front of her, and so practice her speaking. As everyone knows, there is a pearl of wisdom, practice makes it perfect.
Now this was definitely a great answer, but there are a couple of things that we can do to improve upon it. The first thing is that when we're delivering our answers for the TOEFL, we want to speak with energy and speed because that shows fluency. I believe that we were comfortable enough to speak a bit faster, and while speaking faster we can deliver more content, and more content is going to give us a higher score. So always go in with that energy and try to say as much as you can. The next thing is we have two grammar points that I want us to work on. The first is the word advice. If you remember, advice is a non-count noun, just like water. So we don't want to use a and we don't want to have s. Now the next thing is that you're talking about specific advice, not general. So we need to use the specific word the following advice. The next thing is that after hypothesize, we need to say that there were. The reason is because hypothesize is a verb that's usually followed by a noun clause. If you don't remember what a noun clause is, that's a sentence that usually begins with that functions as a noun. So an easy everyday example might clear it up. You know the word know? It's a word that we use all the time. And sometimes we say things like, I know that you were late this morning. Well, that you were late this morning is a sentence that begins with that functions as a noun. It's the object of the verb know. So that's an example of a noun clause. Hypothesize is used the same way as know. So hypothesize that there were. Now there's one more point there, and that's with the verb were. If you remember, whenever you talk about imaginary situations, we use the verb were. For example, right now I'm based in Pasadena. So I would say a sentence like, if I were in New York, I would go to a couple of shows. So I'm not in New York. It's imagined, so I say were. I don't say if I was, I don't say if I am, I say if I were. Hope you guys remember that old grammar point. So besides that, this is a wonderful answer. Good job. Now let's actually hear a great transition from the first example to the second reason. And this is a transition that you want to use in case you're answering a question that's also imaginary. So let's go ahead and listen to it.
I'd like to hypothesize here that
we already know that this is a good transition for questions that are imaginary. But one of the things that I noticed in our speech is that we can use a little work with natural intonation, the rhythm and the volume of our language when we speak. It doesn't quite match a native speaker's as much as I think it could. Whenever you have this situation or for good general practice, one thing that I recommend is take any recorded speech, maybe record about 30 seconds of anything, this YouTube video, lectures that you guys listen to, anything. And what you want to do is you want to write down every single word that you hear. So dictation, write a transcript. And then what you want to do is you want to read that transcript and read it in the exact same way that you hear it. So follow the intonation, the volume, the speed, everything of the native speaker. And what you're going to do is you're going to start to get the rhythm, the volume, the voicing, everything in the word grouping of the way you speak when we speak English naturally. And that's really going to help you to deliver more powerful language to get you a higher score. Now let's actually listen to the second reason and how it's developed.
Practicing decreases the fear of speaking, especially when the speaker hypothesizes that he or she is talking in front of a large group of people. For instance, I had a friend who was a computer programmer and she was very shy. She had to speak about a program that she developed in front of the staff. She practiced with unimaginative people. Then she was virtually fearless.
Now that was great because we actually had an example of not only last week's word, but our first class's word, virtually. So very, very good job. Now there's only one point worth mentioning there, and that's with the usage of the word imaginative. Imaginative is actually creative. That's what it means. So the word that we want to use is imaginary, which means imagined. The next thing is that, remember, people is plural, more than one. So we don't want to use a or and there. So we want to delete that, imaginary people. So very good work. Now this whole big example is wonderful, and I hope you guys learned a lot from it. So now we've reached the end of our class, and this is where I get to tell you the homework for next week. So what I'd love for you guys to do is actually use the word apparatus in your own hypothetical story to illustrate its usage. So just like I told you guys the story with John, I want you to make up your own story using apparatus. It doesn't have to be a big story, just 2, 3, 4 sentences, and I want you guys to either submit that in the comment section below, or you can email it to me at myclass@noteful.com, or you can click on the link below where you'll be taken to Noteful and you'll be able to submit your stories there. And next week I'm going to pick the best story and we're going to use that to learn about grammar and punctuation and make sure that we remember what apparatus means. So great work today. I hope you enjoyed the class. I had a lot of fun. Don't forget to subscribe so you know when next week's class is out. And until next week, bye-bye.